Plum in the Golden Base Chongzhen edition of Embroidered Portraits Chapter 63. Han Painter's facsimile of a bequest made Simon King deeply saddened while watching the play. Poem says, the beautiful woman in Xiangyao is far away and thoughtful. The brightness is thousands of miles apart. When the wind and moon are on both sides, compared with the drama of spring, it is too late to see each other. When we have been separated for a long time, we still doubt ourselves when dreams come. It is said that Simon King was persuaded by Count Ying, and he wiped his tears and ordered the boy to go back to watch the meal. After a while, Uncle Wu and second Uncle Wu arrived. After bowing before the spirit, he bowed to Simon King and expressed his worries. Please come to the wing and sit with everyone. Dan walked to the back and said to Yun Yang, how is it? I told you that mom didn't believe me, but when the second dad came, he started eating after just talking. Jin Lian said, you thief. You have been used to it for a long time. Qi Zhenzi. Zhenri is taking the lead for him, but there is someone who can't control his temper. Diane said, I have promised my master since I was a child, but I don't know who he is. Yun Yang asked, who will accompany him to dinner? Dan said, my eldest uncle and my second uncle just came here, together with Master Wen, my second father, Z-father, Mr. Han and my brother-in-law. There are 8 people in total. Yun Yang said, I just invite your brother-in-law to come and eat in the back. Get on top. Diane said, sit down, brother-in-law. Yun Yang said, you and the boy go to the kitchen to get some rice. You can eat our porridge with him, for fear of not eating in the morning. Who else is there? While I was at home, I went out to report the funeral and buy things. Wang Jing also sent him to borrow the cloud board from Zhang's father. Yun Yang said, that's servant of the book boy and you can take it. I'm afraid of beating him. Diane said, the book boy and the painting boy are in front of the soul. One is beating the rocks, and the other is waiting to burn incense and paper. Shen Hong, my father sent him to exchange silk with Ben Si. I think the silk is not good, so I want to exchange it for 6 cents apiece. Yun Yang said, come to think of it, I'll give it to Bear for 5 cents. Then she said, call the little servant Hua Tenger. Take it with him quickly. Don't worry about what will happen. Diane and the painting boy took the large plates and bowls to the front and placed them on the 8 immortals table. Everyone was eating when they saw Ping and take the letter in hand and said, Dad Jia sent 3 groups of military guards to come here to agree. Simon King looked at it and ordered, ask for 3 coins of silver to reward him. Right, Jifasheng's reply to you, Dad Jia, thank you very much. While finishing the meal, he accepted the guy. I saw Mr. Han, the painter who came to protect me, arrive. Simon King bowed to him and said, Mr. Fan revealed that he is the son of a god. Mr. Han said, you understand, I understand. Uncle Wu said, it's too late to start. I'm afraid my face will change. Mr. Han said, it doesn't matter. Even the confession can be spread. After having tea, he suddenly saw Ping An coming to report, Uncle Hua is here. Simon King accompanied Hua Zi in front of the soul and cried for a while. After seeing the ceremony, he was with everyone, because he asked, when? Simon King said, when you were good and ugly, you die. Before death, you were still talking brightly, but just after you fell asleep, the girl got up and looked, and she lost her breath. Seeing the child next to Mr. Han holding a screen and taking out a color pen from his sleeve, Hanako asked, brother-in-law, is he going to be a godson now? Watch him morning and night, thinking about him and thinking about him. At the same time, he ordered the guests at the back to get away, raised the curtain, and led Mr. Han and Uncle Hua to the front. Mr. Han lifted up the key banner and took a closer look. He saw Li Pinger wearing a crow-green handkerchief. Although she had been ill for a long time, her color was still lifelike and her appearance remained unchanged. Her lips were rosy and lovely. Simon King couldn't help but cry. Libo and Kintong were holding screens and colors beside them. Mr. Han knew it as soon as he saw it. Everyone gathered round him to ask for a painting. And Earl Ying said, Sir, this is a sick face. When you are well, your face is plump and beautiful. Mr. Han said, you don't need to give orders. I know. Dare to ask Dad. This old lady, the former, was burning incense in the Yu Temple on the first day of May. Is it okay? The big shadow has a half body, and I will give him a piece of satin and 10 taels of silver as an offering to the spirit. Mr. Han said, "Dad, I have given you orders, and the little man is careful." After a while, the whole body was painted, and the jade appearance was beautiful. The flowers are beautiful, and the skin is tender and fragrant. If you show it to everyone, it will be a picture of beauty. Simon King looked at it and told Diane, "Take it with your mother and take a look at it to see if it's good. If there are any problems, it can be improved." Dan took it to the back and said to Yun Yang, "Dad, I told you to take a look at Liu Niang's painting. It doesn't look like the other ones. He told me to go out and teach Mr. Han how to change it." Yun Yang said, "When you become a master, you can tinker with it. I don't know where the person died." So he traced the shadow again. Who are his children? Draw a shadow and pass it down to the gods so that he can kowtow to him tomorrow. It would be better to draw 6 shadows. Meng Yilu and Li Jiar took it over to look at it and said, "Madam, come and see. Sisterly looks like Hershey, freshly dressed, but her lips are slightly flattened." More, Yun Yang looked at it and said, "The forehead on the left side is a little lower, and the corners of his eyebrows are more curved. What a shame for this man." Diane said, "He has seen Liu in the temple, on my mother's side. I just thought about it and drew it like this." After a while, Wang Jing came in and said, "Every time Mom looks at it, I tell you to take it out. Kiao's father is here. Wait for Kiao's father to take a look." Diane walked to the front and said to Mr. Han, "It's set inside. The lips are a little flatter, the left forehead is a little lower, and the eyebrows are a little more curved." Mr. Han said, "That doesn't matter." He then took the brush and corrected it and showed it to Kiao Dahu. Kiao Dahu said, "This portrait of my mother-in-law is really well done. Only one breath is missing." Simon King was full of joy and handed Mr. Han 3 minutes of wine, took care of the food and wine, and taught him to take out a ruler, 12 liang of platinum, and Mr. Han taught him, "First make the half body, and then hang it as a big shadow. Just don't miss the funeral. It should be made of green and green. The crown and robe should be neat, and the silk should be mounted on the tooth scroll." Mr. Han said, "There is no need to give instructions. I know." After receiving the money, he taught the child to hold the screen and said goodbye before going out. Kiao Dahu and everyone looked at the finished coffin again, and then asked, "Is your mother already buried in a small coffin?" Simon King said, "Now we are here to carry out the small coffin. The big coffin will have to wait for 3 days." Kiao Dahu finished eating tea and left. After a while, a passerby came to wait on him, rolled up the papers, and laid out his quilt. Simon King wanted to see him personally and forced Chen Jingji to be a filial son. They kissed him, and Simon Qingxuan found a bead and placed it there, in his mouth. Immediately, the small coffin was ready and placed neatly in front of the photo, and the whole family burst into tears. Lake Xingyu Ming made 4 piles of gold and powder in his clothes shop, holding basins and towels to wash his hair. 2 of them were placed on each side. The Yi stove vase, candlestick and incense box in front of the soul were made by a tinsmith and placed on the table, shining brightly in the sun. He exchanged another 10 taels of silver and taught the silversmith to make 3 pairs of silver cups. He also agreed with Count Ying to take charge of the funeral books. He first exchanged 500 taels of silver and 100 coins, and entrusted them to Han Han to take care of the accounts. Bai Si and Lai Xing'er were in charge of the comprator and the outside kitchen. Count Ying, Zi Zaida, Wen Shukai and Gan took turns waiting for the mourners. Chui Ben was in charge of paying mourning bills, Lai was in charge of the external warehouse, Wang Jing was in charge of the wine room, Chun Hung and Painting Boy were in charge of serving the mourners. Ping and the 4 platoon troops were in charge of the single person he came to play cloud, tablets and hold incense paper. He also asked a writer to lead for platoon troops, write down the door book at the front of the gate, mark the date of chanting, and carry umbrellas and banners. All appointments have been made, notices have been written and posted on the screen wall, and everyone must abide by them. Zhu Nai, the emperor's minister, sent someone to send 60 fir sticks, 30 moso bamboos, 300 reed mats, and 100 hemp ropes. Simon King rewarded the visitor 5 coins of silver and sent him a posthumous reply. Went, instruct the builders to raise the ridge of the shed to make it larger, leave the doors to go out, and sandwich the screen wall in the middle. 3 more tents are built in the front kitchen. and 7 tents are built at the front door. Please ask the 12 monks of Baoan Temple to read first. In the Pao Sutra, serve tea with 2 cups of tea and wine every day. Uncle Hua and Uncle Wu sat down for a while, then got up and went. Simon King asked Wen Shukai to write a note of filial piety. He wanted to publish it and ordered it to be written. Jing's wife is dying. Wen Shukai quietly showed it to Earl Ying. The Earl said, "This ceremony does not make sense. Seeing that the Wu family's sister-in-law is here now, how can I make it happen? No one will talk about it when I go out. Even Brother Wu feels uncomfortable. Wait until I talk to him later. Don't write anymore. Let's go home together." Went. Simon King did not go to the back at night, so he installed a cool bed next to Li Pingera's spirit, surrounded it with a screen, and slept alone. Zi Chun Hung and Shuttinger came to wait on him. At dawn, he went to Yunyang's room to freshen up, and put on a white tang scarf, a mourning crown, a mourning dress, white velvet socks, and white shoes, which he took with him. In the early morning of the next day, Jia Tixing came to visit the funeral and express his condolences. After Simon King returned the gift, Wen Shukai accompanied him and left for tea. When he arrived at the door, he ordered the writer. Hao Sheng agreed. Any platoon troops that cannot be found will be brought to the Yamen for punishment. After saying that, he rode off. Simon King ordered Wen Shukai to post a message and send people to invite relatives to chant sutras for 3 days, and come early to eat fast. Later in the afternoon, arrangements were made to tidy up the dojo and hang the Buddha statues. No need to go into details. On that day, Wu Yin'er inquired and learned that he came to the funeral in a sedan chair, cried and laid paper. At the back, Yunyang met. Wu Yin'er kowtowed to Yunyang and cried, "Liu Niang is gone. I don't know a word of Tong, so there is no one to talk to me. It's so pitiful." Meng Yulu said, "You are his goddaughter. Why don't you come and see him?" Wu Yin'er said, "Good Sanyang, I know that there is someone who won't come to see you. I really don't know. If you don't come to see your mother, he still cares about you. He left something behind to say something to you. I'll keep it for you." Yin Ling Xiaoyu said, "Take it out and show it to Sister Yin." Xiaoyu he walked inside, took out his baggage, and opened it to find a set of satin clothes, 2 gold-hatted hairpins, and a golden flower. Wu Yin'er cried like raindrops and said, "I had known that his old man was not well, so I would have come to stay with him for 2 days." After saying this, he thanked Yunyang. Yunyang waited for tea with him and left him for 3 days. On the 3rd day, the monk made a rock, chanted sutras in the ashram, and picked out paper money. The whole family wears linen and mourns. Chen Jingji wore a heavy filial piety scarf and worshipped in front of the Buddha. Neighbors, relatives, friends and officials all came to pay their respects and offered memorial papers, regardless of their number. Mr. Zhu of Yin and Yang came early to serve the coffin. After the memorial service was completed and the body was carried into the coffin, Simon Qingjiao and Wu Yunyang found 4 sets of colored clothes from him and put them in the coffin. 4 small silver coins were placed in the 4 corners. Hua Ziyu said, "Brother-in-law, there is no need to put him in there. Gold and silver will surely come out in time, so it is not a long-term plan." Simon King refused and insisted on putting him in there. After a while, the 7-star board was put down, the purple cover was put on, and the 4 sides of the pillar were nailed together with long-lasting nails, and the whole family burst into tears. Simon King cried so hard that he kept shouting, "My young sister, I will never see you again." After crying for a long time, he sent Mr. Zhu away after attending to the meal. Everyone in the family wears scarves and mourning clothes, and when they perform incense, the front of the door is all white. When Shukai recommended it, and Du Zhongshu from the north came to write an inscription. Du Zhong's book name is Zichen, and his nickname is Yunye. He used to serve Zhenzong in Ninghal. Now he is sitting at home. Simon King has prepared gold and silk to invite him. A fruit box was prepared in the rolling shed. Simon King personally delivered 3 glasses of wine, and Earl Ying and Wen Shukai accompanied him. On the red official banner, Simon King wanted to write the 11 words edict to seal Simon Gongren Li's coffin in Jinyi. The Earl repeatedly refused and said, "Seeing that the royal wife is here, how can I do it?" Du Zhong wrote, "Having given birth to a son has no problem with etiquette." After talking for a long time, The word gong was removed and replaced with family member. When Xiu Kai said, "The honorable person is the married woman and has a noble title. The family member is the person in the house. It is just a normal title." So he finished the title with white powder, and the two words edict and fang were pasted in gold and hung in front of the soul. He mentioned the Lord of God again. He knelt down to thank Du Zhongshu, took care of the food and wine, and then left. On that day, each family of Kiao Dahu, Uncle Wu, Uncle Hua, Uncle Han, and Uncle Shen sacrificed 3 animals on the table to burn paper. Mrs. Kiao Dahu, together with Wu de Jinzi, Jinzi and Hua de Jinzi, came to mourn in sedan chairs, offering sacrifices and crying. The moon goddess and others all wear filial piety buns, their heads tied around their waists, and linen filial piety skirts. They come out to return the favor and express their condolences, leaving them behind for tea and fasting. Only Hua Dajuzi and Hua Daju are filial piety upright, while the rest are light filial piety. That day, Sister Li Gui inquired and learned that she had come to load paper in a sedan chair. When she saw Wu Yin'er here, she said, "When did you come? How come you can't wait for me?" "Good man, it turns out I only care about you," Wu Yin'er said. "Me too. I didn't know that my mother was gone, but I would have come to see her if I had known. Yu Niang will take care of her from behind, so there is no need to elaborate." After a while, I saw the first 7, and there were 16 monks from Baoan Temple again. The monk named Lang was at the head, leading the water and land dojo, reciting the Lotus Sutra, and worshipping the Samadhi water repentance. All relatives, friends and associates gathered together. On that day, Taoist official Wu from the Jade Emperor Temple came to pay homage to the emperor and took the 27 scriptures. Simon King stayed in the scroll shed to eat. Suddenly a young boy came to report, "Mr. Han has sent a half-figure." Everyone looked at him and saw that he was wearing a gold and green crown, a pair of phoenix pearls to pick cards, a bright red makeup and flowered robe, and a fragrant white face, as if he were alive. Simon King was filled with joy when he saw him. When the wood was hung, everyone praised it. "It's just a little less breathy." While letting people eat in the rolling shed, they told him, "The big shadow needs to be worked on more." Mr. Han said, "You don't dare to be careless when you polish your essays." Simon King said, "Go away with a generous reward." At noon, Kiao Dahu came to offer sacrifices. There were about 50 pigs and sheep sacrifices, gold and silver mountains, satin and silk ribbons, and paper sticks and incense. They were hung on the ground and lifted high. Gongs and drums were played. Fine music was played, and tassels and strings were noisy. Simon King and Chen Jingji put on mourning clothes and paid tribute in front of the soul. Kiao Dahu invited 7 or 8 relatives and friends from Shangzhen, Zhu Tangguan, Uncle Wu, Liu Zuguan, Hua Qianhu, and Wen Qin's family to offer incense in front of the funeral. After the 3 offerings were completed, they all knelt down and listened to Yin Yangsheng read the blessing text and said, "In the 7th year of Wei Zhang, in the year of Dingyu, in the 9th month, Gangshinshuo, and on the 22nd day of Yu, Shinzi, Kiao Hong and others would like to pay tribute to the soul of my late mother-in-law, Simon Roran Li, with a mane of strong hair and soft hair. Alas, the nature of a child is generous and gentle. He is diligent and thrifty in managing his family. He is kind to his family. He restrains his wife's morality, and he is famous in his country. The beauty of the boudoir, the fragrance of orchids and flowers, the long-term match for a gentleman, and the service of Luan Huang. The sapphire has been planted, and the pearl has been polished. In the right period, you can play the harp and harp for eternity, and enjoy a long life without borders. Hu Wei is sick, dreaming of breaking the yellow beam. Who doesn't feel sad when a good person dies? A weak girl is in swaddling clothes, showering her with love on her wife. If you don't expect the middle way, God will not follow your wishes, and the mandarin duck will go astray. Hate is separated from the netherworld. Don't see the hidden things. The long friendship is contained in this cup. Ling Shi has knowledge, and he comes to Jan to Shin. Shang-Shi. After the officials and guests have finished offering sacrifices and returning gifts, they are left to wait at the tables and seats in the rolling shed. Then Mrs. Kiao Dahu, Mrs. Kui's mother, Mrs. Zhu Tangguan, Mrs. Shangzhen, and Sister Twin all paid tributes to the guests and their family members. Gongs and drums were played on the ground, and the ghost team danced in front of the spirit. After Wu Yunyang cried with her, she asked her to go to the back to wait for tea and a banquet. There was no need to go into detail about the 3 soups and 5 cuts. Simon King was having wine with others in the rolling shed when suddenly a cloudboard sounded in front of him. The one who agreed hurriedly came in and reported, "My lord, who is here with the papers? Get off the sedan at the door." The panicked Simon King hurriedly put on his morning clothes and waited in front of the soul. Even if Wen Shukai went out to greet him in plain clothes, his left and right hands would first bring incense paper, and then Hu Fuyin would bring them in plain clothes and gold. Many officials gathered round, holding their clothes and belts. When they arrived in front of the spirit, Chun Hung knelt down, held the incense high, offered it, and bowed twice. Simon King said, "Old sir, please get up. I have a lot of work to do." He quickly came down and returned the gift. Hu Fuyin said, "When did your wife die?" "The students only found out yesterday. It's too late to hang." "It's too late." Simon King said, "The side room is ill and can't be saved. It's in vain to humiliate the old gentleman." When Shu Kai bowed beside him and said, "Please go to the hall and wait for a cup of tea." Hu Fuyin stood up, and when Shu Kai walked out of the door and got into the sedan chair, the person offering sacrifices eats it and then disperses it at noon. The next day, Zheng Ayur's family in the courtyard came to hand over the paper. Ayur went to the soul and burned the paper, seeing that he had brought 8 plates of cakes, rice, and soup to commemorate the sacrifice. Yunyang quickly begged for a piece of silk morning skirt to give him. Wu Yin'er and Sister Li Gui both paid 3 coins to pay homage to Simon King. Simon King said, "What's it worth? Everyone just needs a piece of silk with him." Yunyang invited her to the back room, where she served tea and stayed the night. In the evening, relatives, friends and people came to stay with me and asked a group of high-end children to act in a play. Li Ming, Wu Hui, Zheng Feng, and Zheng Chun all agreed here. Simon King placed 15 tables and seats in the greenhouse, headed by Kiao Dahu, Uncle Wu, Second Uncle Wu, Uncle Hua, Uncle Shen, Uncle Han, Ni Shu Kai, Wen Shu Kai, Medical Officer Ren, Li Si, Huang For, Earl Ying, Zi Zaida, Zhu Xinian, Sun Zizui, Bai Lai Guang, Chang Zhiji, Fu Rixen, Han Daoguo, Gan Chongzhen, Ben Dechuan, Wu Shunchen, 2 nephews, and 6 or 7 people from the neighborhood were all present. It's a table opening. After lighting a dozen large candles, the guests gathered round the screen in front of the soul, placed tables and seats under the curtains, and went out to watch the performance. At that time, everyone had finished paying their respects. Simon King and Jingji returned from the ceremony and sat down at the banquet. The actors below moved the gongs and drums and acted out the story of the marriage between Wei Gao and Yu Xiaonu. After a while, he pretended to be Wei Gao and sang for a while. Tai Dan played the jade flute and sang again. The cook served soup and rice and cuts the goose. Earl Ying then said to Simon King, "I heard that the 3 sisters in the courtyard are here. Why don't you invite me to come out and share a glass of wine with my father-in-law Kiao and my uncle? He actually knows how to read operas, which will benefit him." Simon King asked Dan to come in and said, "Please come out." Kiao Dahu said, "This is not appropriate. He comes to mourn. How can I ask him to hand over the wine?" The count said, "My dear, you don't know. Don't leave a little whore like this alone. Take her out with me quickly. You said that if the 6th mother is gone, she should only be filial and give me a glass of wine." Diane went in for a long time and said, "I heard that Ying's father was sitting there, but he didn't come out." The Earl said, "I'll go ahead." He took a few steps and sat down again. Simon King smiled and said, "Why are you back again?" The Earl said, "I am determined to drag those 3 little whores out, and I will not go until I get out of my temper by scolding them." Diane asked once, and then the 3 of them came out slowly. They all wore white silk jackets and blue satin skirts. They bowed to the people at the table and stood beside them with a smile. Earl Ying said, "Whenever I'm here, why do you just push me and refuse to come out?" The 3 of them didn't agree, so they handed the wine back and set up a table to sit at. The drums and music were playing below, and I came up with my eyes closed. Sheng was dressed as Wei Gao, and Jing was dressed as Bao Zhenmu, and they went to Yu Xiao's house in Gulinli. The mother came out to greet her, and Bao Zhenmu said, Go and ask that sister to come out. The mother said, Guanbao, you're not a good person. My daughter won't be able to come out anytime soon. I can't even say please. What do you do? Tell him to come out? Then Sister Li Gui smiled at the table and said, this guy named Bao is just like Ying Huasi. He is an ignorant bitch. The Earl said, little whore. I don't know what to do. Why does your mother like me? Sister Gui said, he likes you? Simon King said, let's watch the show. If you say anything, you will be punished with a glass of wine. The actor did it again and then quit. On the left side of the hall, those watching the opera from the hanging curtain are Wu de Jinzi, Jinzi, Miss Young, Grandma Pan, Aunt Wu, Aunt Meng, Wu Shunshan's daughter-in-law Zheng Sanji, Sister Duan, and the Yunyang sister of the same family. On the right side, those watching the opera from the hanging curtain are its spring plum blossoms, jade flutes, orchids, Yingxun, and Xiaoyu, all crowded to watch. Zheng Qi, who was making tea, was passing under the curtain with a plate of nut tea. Chen Mai stopped him and asked, who are you going to take tea with? Zheng Qi said, the 6 ladies over there want to eat. Take a cup of this spring plum in your hand. Xiaoyu didn't want to hear that the dancer who was acting below was also named Yu Xiao, so she pulled Wang Xiao and said, whore, your lonely old man is here. The madam asked you to pick up the guests, but you haven't gone out yet. He pushed out with all his strength. With one push, she was pushed straight out of the curtain. Chen Mai held tea in her hand and pushed it all over. He scolded Yu Xiao. What a whore. I don't know why Zhongzi is so stubborn. She pushed and spilled everyone's tea. She didn't break the cup long ago. Simon King heard this and sent Anna down to ask, who is making noise inside? Chen Mai sat on the chair and said, go ahead and tell me, a prostitute with a jade flute is a prostitute who has met a man like this. Simon King asked once, and handed the wine to people at the table. That's all. Yunyang walked over and scolded Xiao Yu. The day you come out, you should also take a look into the house. Everyone is here. Who is in the house? Xiao Yu said, sister, I went behind just now, and the 2 masters are also there, sitting in the room. Yunyang said, I'll teach you thieves to watch here, and it's wrong to mess around. Seeing Yunyang coming, Chen Mai stood up quickly and said, Mom, you ask him. They all looked like people with a disease. They were all crazy, laughing and joking, and didn't care about anyone seeing them. The Yunyang scolded her for a while, and then went over there. At that time, Qiao Dahu and Nishukai got up first. Uncle Shen, Medical Officer Ren, and Uncle Han were also about to get up, but Earl Ying stopped him and said, Master, please say something. We are friends, and we don't dare to leave, even if one of the in-laws has to go. Uncle Shen is not separated by the door. Uncle Han, Mr. Ren, and Uncle Hua are all outside the door. It's late at night, and the door hasn't been opened yet. Why are you so anxious? Come and sit down. You haven't closed your eyes yet. Simon King said again. He ordered the young man to pick up 4 jars of magu wine and put them in front of him, saying, you only have these 4 jars of wine, and I won't keep any of them. He put the big bell in front of Uncle Wu and said that anyone who leaves the table and stands up will be punished by his uncle. So everyone sat down again. Simon King ordered the book boy, urged the disciples to close their eyes and come up quickly, and tell them to sing in a lively place. After a while, he beat the drum board, and the last person came up and asked Mayan Menking, do you want the discount on Sun True Face? Sing, Simon King said, I don't care about you, as long as it's fun. Tai Dan played the jade flute and sang. When Simon King can sing the line, it's hard to meet each other in this life, so I send you a picture. He suddenly remembered Li Pingera's appearance when he was ill, and felt it in his heart. He couldn't stop tears from falling from his eyes, and he couldn't help but take a sweat towel from his sleeve to wipe it. Pan Jinlian saw her coldly from behind the curtain, pointed at Yunyang, and said, Auntie, you see, he is such a tramp with no background. How can he cry when he sees a performer while eating wine? Yuyulu said, you are so smart, but you don't know these things. There are joys and sorrows, partings and reunions. I must have seen that part that touched his heart. He missed people when he saw things, and thought of horses when he saw saddles. Jinlian said, I don't believe it. It makes me cry when he sings. Worrying about the ancients is all in vain. If he can make me cry when he sings, I will be considered a good actor, Yoon Young said. Sixth sister, please just listen, Yuin said to Da Jinzi. I don't know why the sixth sister, have to speak quickly. The actor performed it again. And around 5 o'clock, everyone stood up. Simon King blocked the door with a big cup and handed him wine. He couldn't keep the money, so he sent them all out. After watching the guy, he left the theater box behind and said, tomorrow Eunuch Liu and Eunuch Zhu will come to pay homage, and we will continue to perform for one day. All the actors agreed. After taking care of the food and wine, he returned to his place to rest. Li Ming and the other four also returned home without mentioning anything. When Simon King saw that it was getting dark, he went back to rest. Exactly how much you get. Red sun reflected in the window is cold and pale, and the light of dawn is faint in the pale mist of bamboo.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.